You know, at any given time, approximately 10% of the churches in the Southern Baptist Convention are without a pastor. During this time, many congregations become anxious and impatient, which can often lead to bad decision-making. However, a wise congregation will use this time to assess their strengths and weaknesses, mend some broken fences, renew their vision, set some growth goals, and of course, pray. You know, the church is truly in a period of transition. Webster defines transition as a passage from one state, stage, subject, or place to another. A transitional pastor assists a church during the passing of leadership from one pastor to another. The transitional pastor leads a congregation to use this time effectively by being positive and constructive. This can be a time of gaining momentum and productivity. Please listen closely as we hear from transitional pastors, pastor search committee members, lay members, and a pastor who has followed a transitional pastor talk about their experience.
In February of 2000, Lifeway had been asked by many people to look into a distinctly Southern Baptist approach to interim ministry. There have been other approaches that have been used, and many churches have found that very effective, but we wanted something that was distinctly for our churches. So we formed a think tank in February of 2000.
And they were talking about needing special help and methodology to help a church during that period of time. How to give a church an experienced pastor with a method of getting to the bottom of their problems and helping them to evaluate their ministry.
And out of that think tank came a steering team, an advisory team that began to develop this ministry, which we eventually called the Transitional Pastor Ministry.
The term transitional pastor was a relatively new term to me. I'd always grown up in churches and heard the term interim pastor. And interim does kind of refer to almost like a caretaker status.
And we took the time, one business meeting, to say, this is what the transitional pastor does. He comes and he serves as the pastor. He helps the church make decisions. He does the preaching. He makes suggestions. He gives direction.
The transitional pastor, the role of the transitional pastor, was new to us. It was new to us. But we liked the idea. We went with it. And we called a transitional pastor, and it was a great thing.
Now you may be thinking, okay, so this transitional pastor idea sounds pretty good. But who really needs a transitional pastor, and what kind of church can benefit from this type of ministry?
One of the challenges that church during that time between pastors face is wanting to rush too quickly to move to another pastor, and it's probably one of the greatest mistakes they make. That's one of the advantages of having a transitional pastor. The transitional pastor can provide a stability and a continuity during this time, and he is their pastor.
We didn't need to be looking for someone quickly. We needed to be able to take our time, and with the transitional pastor, we felt comfortable and confident that the church would continue to minister, would continue to grow in ministries and missions under his leadership, and still allow us to be looking for the person God had for us to be our permanent pastor.
We lost our pastor, and it was a small mission church, and immediately everybody wanted to find a new pastor. And so we formed a search committee, and I ended up being involved in that, and it was a difficult process. Learned a lot from it, but we searched and looked for slightly less than 6 months, maybe 5 months, and we found a capable young pastor out of seminary, called him, and he was at our church I think a total of 11 months, and it was a very rocky road. He had some tough times there, and after that was over and they began to look for the third pastor, I knew something was not quite right with the picture, and didn't know what we had done wrong, or as far as the search goes, if anything. Knew that the church was really kind of getting our new pastor on the rebound, because he was continually compared to the founding pastor, and that was a source of frustration for him and for the church.
Often it's good to wait anywhere from 3 to 7 months, 9 months, before the committee is even formed, let alone really get cranking. And thus they aren't tempted to try to go out and rush to find someone. Probably the biggest mistake is the church has rushed too quickly.
The one thing the transitional pastor did is he made it quite clear that he was not available for full-time employment as our pastor.
One of the things the transitional pastor did was help the people kind of redream the dream, kind of refocus on what was really important in ministry. They'd had a lot of distractions over the previous 2 years, and they needed some time to heal. They needed some time to really come together as a congregation to find out why we exist, why are we here, and the transitional pastor led that process.
And I have to credit the transitional pastor for preparing the congregation to believe in itself and to know that it had a capacity far larger than we thought we had.
He preached a lot of sermons that kind of helped calm down the anger, helped people kind of put some issues to rest, issues with each other, issues with the church. But he preached God's Word. He preached the gospel, and there were some people that were convicted from that, and he stepped on the toes that needed to be stepped on, and he patted the ones that needed to be patted on the back and hugged the ones that needed to be hugged.
Our transitional pastor, like I said, he got to know us as people. He got to know our families. He came to fellowships. He attended committee meetings. He was available for personal counseling if that was necessary, or one-on-one time with the members.
There was another committee that was looking at issues within the church, that interpersonal issues. Where does the church need to offer some forgiveness within the body? Where does healing need to take place?
A transitional pastor will covenant with the church to lead them through some stages of transition. For example, he will lead the church to look at its history, to discover and affirm biblical principles for church growth, to focus on kingdom results, to establish effective church practice, to allocate its leadership, facility, and financial resources appropriately, to assist the search committee in finding a pastor to lead in fulfilling God's future for the church, and to help the new pastor get a good start in the church and community.
So that's what a transitional pastor does. He comes in and he helps you to understand the nature of your church.
Our transitional pastor was with us for about 1.5 years. It took that long for us to go through all that we needed to finish and to do to be ready for a new pastor. And our transitional pastor really helped us to get ready.
One of the things that I try to do with the committee is to lead them through that pastor search committee handbook. The man told me last week just to have all of the references that are in that handbook, even letters and how to write them. He said that is the greatest tool that I have ever used in his ministry as a director of missions. And I always lead them through that and teach them how to go about checking with pastors, contacting them, and so forth.
I was a member of the pastor search committee, and our transitional pastor was an invaluable help, a resource for us. He really helped us to find some materials to help us with our task. He put us in touch with our state convention and with Lifeway and with other entities that would be of help to us. He also met with us several times, not regularly, not throughout the whole process, but especially at the beginning. He met with us and just helped us to know the kinds of questions we should ask, the places we should look, the kinds of person that we might be wanting to look for.
We were ready for a new pastor when he came. And our transitional pastor did everything to help us get ready, to not have unreal expectations.
Following a transitional pastor was incredible because it was almost like, in some ways, he was a John the Baptist for me. He kind of prepared the way. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know who was going to be after him. But he also knew he was not the man. He was not the pastor. But he took the time to help the people be prepared for the time that their pastor would come, which ended up being me.
Now, some of you may be wondering, how long should a church expect a transitional pastor to stay? And what kind of compensation should he receive?
The transitional pastor that we ultimately called was with us for about 18 months.
How much time would the transitional pastor be on the field? That's going to be according to where the man lives. Some of our transitional pastors have moved on the field. I've been in many of the churches where I've stayed in a mission residence and felt a freedom to come and to go. And that has been very helpful, and some are able to do this. Most of my time has been the weekends, and if it was close enough, on Wednesday. And sometimes I would be able to come and do staff meetings on Monday or on Saturday and deacons meetings on Sunday. It's really according to the time and distance that you're getting this transitional pastor.
One of the questions the committee may ask, what do we pay a transitional pastor? Well, if he is there full-time and doing everything the previous pastor has done, probably you're going to pay him what you paid that pastor. There may be some benefits, there may be some other elements that you would negotiate, but you need to look at that. If you're having somebody who is functioning bivocationally, then you need to think through what is the time investment this person has, including some of the travel time if it's some distance, the full time of Sunday that's involved, Wednesday night, preparation time because that they would be preparing messages and also meeting with committees. And then calculate what percentage of a full-time pastor is that, and that may give you a frame of reference for beginning to discuss a particular amount. Also to be able to consider the payment of mileage.
As the pastor, I think it put our church a year down the road further than it would have been had there not been a transitional pastor.
Our experience with transitional pastor was outstanding. We really feel God sent him to us, and he was the right man for our church for the period of time that he was there.
If you would like to learn more about the Transitional Pastor Ministry or how to find a transitional pastor for your church, let me suggest that you contact your state convention, associational director of missions, or you may contact Lifeway.